Get up, cocksuckers, it's all over.
Gamers, we have been fed. The Breath of the Wild sequel-shaped hunger pang we have been experiencing in our collective stomachs has been satiated. However, some still argue that this wasn't enough. Let's go through the trailer together, frame by frame, and see if there are any clues that could lead to a potential narrative or a game mechanic. Everything I'm going to be bringing up is of course based on my own experiences and my own knowledge of the Zelda series. As a lifelong Zelda fan, these are by no means correct. Let's dive into it. The moment this trailer began and I heard that little piano trill, I knew it was the moment we have been waiting for years. This little sound cue is so recognizable within Breath of the Wild. I remember they used a similar version of this in 2017 to announce Breath of the Wild.
Open your eyes.
One thing to note here after hearing this first little sound cue is actually that it ups an octave from what we are familiar with. I think this actually has narrative implications because so much of this game looks like it's going to be taking place in the sky off the ground. I think that they are upping the octave to sort of symbolize that. They're taking what we know from Breath of the Wild, which is so recognizable and why we're able to immediately recognize that this was the sequel we have all been waiting to hear news about, and taking it quite literally to the next level, up the octave. And I think that this is to signify the sort of shift in geographical location. Okay, so we have this new figure. This new figure doesn't look like a divine beast. This figure doesn't look like Ganondorf. This figure doesn't look like Zelda or Link, so who is it? I'm kind of getting Majora's Mask vibes. There's something sort of dark and ominous, something occluded about this figure. Some of the symbols are very much giving me that kind of Skull Kid vibe. I also have another theory for who this could be, but I'm going to wait to get into it. These next set of glyphs sort of remind me of Twilight Princess. This whole area here reads as Twilight to me. This is the Twilight realm. You can see moblins and bokoblins coming out from the Twilight, and you can see a battalion of warriors on the left side, and you see one warrior cross the threshold, cross that barrier in the fray with the monsters, and I think this is Link. And over here on the right side here, you can see someone laying down. This could just represent a dead soldier, or this could represent someone in a slumber like Link was in Breath of the Wild. Maybe people are falling into deep slumbers like Link was in Breath of the Wild. We really don't know. There are 7 of these orbs floating around and above this figure. There are 8 geographical locations in Breath of the Wild, 8 different regions. I think because we have literally seen in the trailer from 2021 the central area where the castle is lift off the ground, I'm going to put out a theory here and say that the 7 orbs represent the 7 remaining regions that are on the ground, or maybe they'll be in the sky. I'm not sure, but that is how I'm connecting it in my mind. I think that these orbs represent the different regions that we came to know in Breath of the Wild. This next frame features Zelda sort of ascending. It sort of looks like an awakening. A person on Twitter actually made this comparison between Skyward Sword and this frame we see here when Zelda is awoken as the goddess Hylia in the end of Skyward Sword. It's a very similar, these 2 frames are very, very similar. Great little call out there. I also think that to the right of Zelda here in the new trailer, it looks like the king. This looks like the king to me. This looks like King Bosphoramos. This looks like, you know, King of the Red Lions himself. I don't know what he would be doing there, but I think that a lot of this story is going to have to do with the aristocracy coming back into play. I think that perhaps him and Zelda will reinstate a kingdom over Hyrule again. This one is huge. This one is major to me. This was one of the most important frames of the trailer to me. At first, I thought that this was Zelda making this hand formation with Link, because that makes sense. Zelda and Link, of course, they're the it couple. Come on. So naturally, I thought that Zelda was extending her hand to make this shape with Link. And as we know, Link's hand has been sullied by either malice or twilight or something. So this sort of dark color and this monstrous claw that we're seeing grip Zelda's to make this shape, it would make sense if it was Link, but it's not. It is not Link. It's not Link. I will get into who I think it is later at the end of the trailer, but hold on to that thought. Okay, so then we get into the first frame that isn't a glyph on a cave, which is great. So we see Link burst through these two doors, and we get the emblem, which we know now is the sort of symbol of this new game. It's carved into the doors here, this Ouroboros figure. They appear to be dragons. This is something we have not seen yet. And I think that the sort of symbolism of this will come into play in a very interesting way. I also want to point out here that these are connected by the Sheikah symbol at the bottom. So the Sheikah presence is still there. I don't believe it has gone away. I think that there is still some connection to the Sheikah. We have not really been given any point of reference to the Sheikah prior to this trailer in this game, I don't believe. You're sort of quite literally seeing how the two games are feeding into one another here, that this is a direct sequel for the first time in a Zelda game. We are getting something that is a deliberate continuation of a previous game. That being said, here we can clearly see that the Sheikah slate that was typically laid on Link's hip is gone. At first I thought these were scrolls. On the 6th or 7th look here, I actually think they look like the spirit vessel from Twilight Princess. In Twilight Princess, you had a mission in every single region to collect tears of light in this spirit vessel. This is kind of what it looks like to me. Okay, so then we are dipped down into this region that looks like the Akala region. And now I'm about to draw the most obvious conclusion I think that pretty much everybody has come to. Skydiving off this floating rock is very reminiscent of Skyloft in Skyward Sword. In Skyward Sword, you would jump off of Skyloft to mount your loft wing and then fly into the clouds so you could drop down beneath the clouds to get into the regions that were playable, or you could fly into other islands in the sky that had collectibles or side quests. I really think that the Skyward Sword influence here is strong. Here we see the time reversal mechanic that we were shown back in 2021 during E3. So could this mean we are literally repairing Hyrule from the ground up? In the way distance here, you see a dragon. This does not look like the dragons that were in Breath of the Wild. To me, this looks like Argarok. This looks like Argarok from Twilight Princess. I feel like this could also potentially be like a new Shadow Bird from the Twilight Realm, if that's what we're going with here, because I think there is deliberate Twilight Princess influence. I don't know. I think that this little detail of this dragon in the background is significant, because this is clearly not one of the great dragons that we see flying around in Breath of the Wild. This is clearly something else. This whole area here looks like Lanayru, and I know that's not like a significant observation or anything, but I do think if I'm going to draw the conclusion of those orbs we saw in the glyph at the beginning being the symbolic representation of the geographical locations in Breath of the Wild, I think that this is sort of speaking to that, because now we've seen Akala, now we've seen Lanayru, so I think that this is a potential theory that might be right. I don't know. This swirling vortex here, this looks like the Thunderhead in Skyward Sword. I just think that this means clearly that it's active, that it's alive, that this is an ongoing storm that perhaps is afflicting a lot of what's going on both beneath and above the clouds. Okay, so this is a seemingly innocuous frame. I thought that this one lasted pretty long for something that didn't tell us much, but upon closer inspection, I really think that what Link is climbing here is a root of the Great Deku Tree. Obviously, it is shaped like a root. It is clearly wood. It is green. There are these speckles that sort of remind me of the ones throughout the Lost Woods. I think that the Great Deku Tree will pretty much, as always, play another significant role in this. So I'm interested to see how he fits into the story, but I do think that this is what this is. There is a lot to see here in this ultra wide frame. The first thing my eye was drawn to was the top of Elden Volcano. It appears as if Malice or Twilight is just pouring out of it. This was clearly not the case in Breath of the Wild, so I'm wondering if an eruption occurs and it plays any part between this rift between land and sky. You can also see the giant piece that was sort of spewed out of it. This reminds me of a plot point in Twilight Princess where you have to retrieve a lava rock that has fallen in Eldin and take it elsewhere. So once again, this sort of connects the concepts of Malice and Twilight to me, and furthermore, Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild and now this game. I am really curious to see if there is a true connection between Malice and Twilight, because we know that Malice is still a thing. We saw it in both of the trailers previous to this one, and we know not all of it has been eradicated, but I think there is enough evidence here to say that Twilight and the Twilight realm will be present in this game. And so I'm wondering what the connection there is. In the background here, you can clearly see the Hebra region. Here in the middle, you can see the Thunder Plateau. Probably missing some things here that also indicate regions that we know, but these are the ones that my eye was just immediately drawn to. Clearly, Link gets his own glider a la Green Goblin. It's pretty fucking cool. This looks like a Loftwing to me, like Skyward Sword, which would make sense because if we are diving out of a floating rock in the sky onto this glider that looks like a Loftwing, and we know that Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess, by extension, take place before this in the timeline, I think that it is a very real possibility that this glider is modeled after the Loftwings. We also can point to the Rito people here. Was this a gift from the Rito people? Was this a gift from Rivali? Was this something that the people in the Rito village were working on to gift to the champion, Link? So within the title here, we see that the Master Sword has been corrupted or corroded by Twilight. This is so clearly Twilight to me. This does not look like Malice. This is Twilight, and I think that this looks almost exactly like Link's arm in that second trailer. So what I did was I went back to the end scene of Twilight Princess and I looked at Minna's true form and I realized, look at this. Look at this. Look at Midna's arm compared to Link's arm, and also compare it to the way that the Master Sword has been corroded. This is eerily similar. And furthermore, if a lot of the game is going to center around restoring the sword, will this reawaken Fi? So here's where things get really, really interesting for me. I think that all of these games are interwoven. Not only are we getting a direct sequel from Breath of the Wild, but we are also getting influences directly of specifically Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword. So we all see the logo here for Tears of the Kingdom. Finally have the name. But I want to pay attention to what is behind the logo. Remember when I said we would come back to this frame with Zelda and her hand outstretched to form this sort of circle? Here are my thoughts. So clearly, this is that new figure that we opened the trailer with. I think this is Midna. I think this is true form Midna. Obviously, this does not look exactly like her imp form or exactly like her true form. However, I think if we take what we know about the Twilight Realm and we take what we know about the sort of Ouroboros theming, there could be some kind of rift between Twilight and Hyrule, but I truly think that this is the goddess Hylia, Zelda, and the Twilight Princess Midna coming together, forming a sort of pact or combining their magics together to fight a common goal. I think that there's going to be some kind of rift or tear. I've been reading it like Tears of the Kingdom because it makes sense. Things are falling from the sky like tears falling down a face. The empire is quite literally crumbling. It's fragmenting. And then I realized it can also be read as Tears of the Kingdom. I think this could mean a tear in space or time, a tear in dimensions, a tear as in something has been broken and needs to be repaired. I think both are true. I don't think it's one or the other. I really think this is a purposeful move. And since we're focusing more on the kingdom this time rather than the wild, it is an interesting dichotomy of this sort of free range to structure. Another fun thing to mention here, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but where's Ganon? Where is he? Where'd he go? There was no mention of Ganondorf. no reference to him. He wasn't in the glyphs that I saw. There was no sort of scary, you know, Ganon sound cues, none of that. So where was he? Previous two teasers slash trailers did point to Ganon in a major way. With this trailer, I feel like was point everybody to the protagonists rather than the antagonists. We all know that Ganondorf is the iconic villain of this series, and signs all point to him returning in this game. I think so much of the first game was centered around collecting memories and fragments of your past self and forming them into your new self, while I think this game is really going to focus on collecting fragments of the earth around you, sort of the external forces, and bringing them back together now that you have formed your whole being. Another thing I want to point out here that I have noticed across all three trailers is that this sort of restorative energy appears to be green. It is not blue like the energy that gets distilled into the Sheikah Slate in Breath of the Wild. And I'm wondering if this is energy that's bestowed by the Twilight Princess. I don't know where it's coming from. This is clearly a different substance. It is clearly a different energy and source than what we were seeing in Breath of the Wild. If this is true, I feel like this definitely adds to that theme of the dark feeding into the light and how this is a cycle and how it's this sort of symbiosis. And looking back on the first two trailers after seeing this one today, it really makes me think that this is going to be a pretty prevalent theme. The very first trailer we got was very dark, mysterious, ominous in tone. It was really reminiscent of Twilight Princess when that was announced all the way back in like 2006. We definitely got a lot more plot and sort of narrative exposed in this without saying much, but it was definitely more focused on a cutscene, while the second trailer we got last year at E3 was definitely more bright. It was saturated, it was colorful, and more mechanics and gameplay were revealed. This was very reminiscent of Skyward Sword to me, this light, bright overworld in the sky with all these clouds. So I think this latest trailer combines both. And this illuminates the Ouroboros theming that we're seeing for the first time. Could this be the very first iteration of a Zelda game we see where we have direct references and direct connections to companions and plot points from previous Zelda games? If so, I really cannot wait to see how they take from Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, because those are the two I'm really getting the most from here. I think there are other influences here, like I said earlier, a bit of Majora's Mask, maybe even a little playfulness from Wind Waker, but there are direct correlations here in my mind that cannot be denied to specifically Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess. And the thought of seeing Midna again and the Twilight Realm again in our good year of 2023, it makes me fucking cry. I'm so excited. So what do you think? Let me know down below what you thought, and let me know if I missed anything in my initial sort of analysis of the trailer breakdown. I would love to hear what you have concocted in your brain. Let me know. Congratulations! As a special treat to making it to the end of the video, you get to play Find the Funnel Cake. Leave a comment down below when you find it, but don't tell anybody where it is, okay? I hope you liked this video because I did, and I hope to see you next time.